Welcome to Fiction Friday. This is episode 10, and I'm Heather Shoemaker, author of books for kids and adults. This episode is dedicated to a family, Caleb, Mariah, and Luke. They've been watching Fiction Friday together as a family, and they've entered the book giveaway, and they even sent me some jokes. So this is for the three of you. Luke also had a birthday during the pandemic, and he said the fire department came by to wish him happy birthday. That's fantastic. I hope you had a memorable one. All three of the kids have read The Griffins of Castle Cary, which is my book for kids that's set in England. And Luke said, I liked learning the meaning of different English words, such as boot, meaning the trunk of a car. And Caleb said, The Griffins of Castle Cary was very well written, with the perfect amount of detail and suspense, full of action. Mariah said, I connected with Ariel's character, and I liked the special friendship that she shared with KK. So if you've read The Griffins of Castle Cary, tell me what you think about it. Go ahead and post an online review, and that will help other kids discover this book too. I'm just going to read, we're going to dive into dialogue today, and I just wanted to read a little bit of dialogue at the beginning of the book. This is when the kids are going off to visit their Aunt Effie, and their dad says, see if you can help out with Uncle Ben. And they've never heard of him. Uncle Ben, says Will. Listen up now, said their father. You get off at Castle Cary. I've talked to the conductor, and he'll tell you when the station comes up. But what about Uncle Ben? Will asked. What about him? Will Uncle Ben be there too? No idea, said their father. I don't think she always brings him to a place like the train station. So many people and noise, you know. Will gulped. If this uncle didn't like people and he didn't like noise, he surely wouldn't like children. This would be a terrible vacation. Does he drool? Will asked. So this dialogue shows a big misunderstanding that's coming up. And the father and Will they're talking at completely cross purposes. They don't know what the other one is thinking about. And if you read the book, you'll find out what happens. So sometimes dialogue creates some tension or some humor between the characters. So dialogue is just when characters in a book are talking to each other. And as Alice in Alice in Wonderland said, what is the use of a book without pictures or conversations in it? So dialogue and the conversations in a book are really important, but sometimes it's tricky to write. I used to be a little bit afraid of dialogue because I wasn't very good at it. Sometimes we have a weak part of our writing. And for me, dialogue was originally my weak part. But now I love it, and I think it's my favorite part of all. So I'm going to share with you 2 tips about writing dialogue for your stories. One is, if you're writing dialogue, don't put in every word that people say. If you listen to people just talking in normal life, they say lots of extra words. They put in lots of ums and ahs and likes, and we repeat ourselves, and we just don't get to the point. And a lot of what we say is actually pretty dull. So when you're writing dialogue, you want to get rid of a lot of that extra filler stuff and just get to the good part. Have you ever seen somebody make maple syrup or know how you make maple syrup? You start with gallons and gallons of watery sap from a maple tree, just tons of it. And then they boil it down and they boil it down and they boil it down. And finally, you're left with just a little bit of the good stuff of the maple syrup. That's the same thing with dialogue. We talk a lot, but you want to boil down and just give us the good stuff for your writing, for the dialogue that you put in. It's a little bit like the highlights of a game. So if you're watching a sports game and the whole game takes 2 hours, there's a lot of parts that aren't that interesting when you might want to get up and go to the bathroom. But if you're watching the highlights of a game, wow, score, and they scored again, and another goal. It's all the amazing plays. That's how you should think about your dialogue, is get rid of the fluff and just concentrate on the golden moments. And that's where you put your dialogue in. So, for example, you have a character, if two kids, one comes over to the other one's house, maybe 6 feet apart, if we're still in social distancing mode. One says, hi. The other one, hi. What's up? Nothing. What do you want to do? I don't know. What about you? And it goes on. Maybe they want to build a tree fort, and eventually they'll get to that. But in your dialogue, you could do it this way. One kid comes up to the other one. That looks like a good tree. For what? For our tree fort. And you're getting right to the point, and you're getting a little bit of tension between the characters, wondering what the other one's thinking. So you cut all the hellos and the goodbyes, and you just get to the good stuff. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is making the dialogue unique to your character. So they have to say it in their own way. For example, if a dragon is chasing your character, you're the main character, dragon's coming at you. The mother character might say, run, run for your life. There's a dragon coming after you, and don't forget your sweater. That might be in character for that mother character. But if you had, say, a 2-year-old cousin in the book who looks up and notices the dragon, the 2-year-old might say, big, big monster. So they're both trying to warn you about the dragon, but depending who the character is, they're going to do it in their own unique way. And that's something that you have to keep in mind. If dialogue is tricky for you, it could be that you don't know your characters well enough, what kind of person they are, not just how old they are, but are they the kind that's going to tell you put on a sweater when a dragon is chasing you? Or are they the kind that's going to start saying all sort of colorful language when the dragon is chasing you? What kind of character do you have? And that will depend on how they talk. So, time for the story cape. All right. So this one has lots of stories in it because this one has to do with how people talk in different countries. Now, when I went to, and some of the reasons I put a mix of characters in the Griffins of Castle Carey, I have the children who come from Minnesota and they're visiting their aunt in England. So she speaks with a British accent and with British words, and they speak with American words. And one of the things that made me think of this, and sometimes how funny that is when I lived in England when I was 11, I spoke American English, and I had to go to school and cope with teachers and children who spoke British English. And a lot of the times, not just the accent was different, but the actual words they used. And I thought, wait a minute, it's supposed to be the same language. There's so many differences. My first day of school, I was asked, what's your surname? I had no idea. I didn't even know I had a surname. And this was the principal of the school, actually the headmaster, as they called it. And he got very annoyed with me and said, what do you mean? You don't even know your name? As if I was a really stupid child because I didn't know my own name. But I didn't know what a surname was. And in case anyone ever asks you, it's your last name. So in my book, I had to think about what kind of characters use what kind of English. And they have, if you look carefully, in a scene where there's an elevator, Will and Meg talk about it as an elevator, but in the same scene, Shep, who's British, calls it the lift. So he's using the British words for it. So just to see how good you are at this, I'm going to give you a little quiz and see if you can give me the British, these are the British words that you can see, and if you can tell me what these mean in American English. So what do these words mean? Boot, bonnet, biscuit, sweets, lorry, and iced lolly. Give you just a moment to think. How many did you get right? The trunk of the car, the hood of the car, cookie, candy, truck, and popsicle. Did you get any of them right? If so, you are ready for a trip once they open up the borders and we can travel again to places like England. Now, the day's joke, I have 2 of them. They came from Caleb and Luke today. The joke from Caleb, Why was the coach yelling at the vending machine? Why was the coach yelling at the vending machine? He wanted his quarterback. And a joke from Luke. When a duck goes shopping, does it pay cash or check? Neither. They put it on the bill. Thanks, guys. Those are both great jokes. I enjoyed them. Now, Caleb and Mariah and Luke have all been Battle of the Books kids. That means that they joined a Battle of the Books team and read a whole bunch of different books and competed in kind of a quiz show showing their knowledge of how well they knew all the details in the book. Have you ever been in a Battle of the Books team? It's a lot of fun. If you love books and you're willing to read books of all kinds of varieties, because you'll get some that are biographies, some that might be a graphic novel. If you only read realistic books, you might read a fantasy book. It's all mixed together. So you get introduced to really new types of books, and then you have a nice time on your team, which can be a lot of fun competing to get all the questions right. I have been a Battle of the Books author, and I think it's a lot of fun to be the guest author, kind of the prize at the end for the winning teams. And I just wanted to show you a fellow that I met while I was Battle of the Booksing. This is Sir Bob, and he and I got to know each other. He didn't talk a lot, but he was the symbol of the Battle of the Books in northern Michigan in Gaylord area. And if you would like to try doing a Battle of the Books, it's often run by your local library or by your school. So suggest if you'd like to have the Griffins be a Battle of the Book, maybe I could come meet you. This is how you get in touch with me. It would be a lot of fun to come and meet you, and I can come in person or I can do remote visits. So if school is still not in session at some point, or your library program needs a remote author, I can do things by screen and we can visit that way. All right. I have book recommendations for you, and because there's 3 of you for today's show, I have 3 books and I picked them out just for you. This one, I saved some of my favorites. This one is a basketball book. This is called Crossover. It's by Kwame Alexander. And I don't know if you've ever read a book in verse before, but a book in verse means it's kind of like, it tells a whole story, but it's in poetry. So this book, it's full of rhythm and it's full of play with language. He even plays, you can see playing with language across the page, the way the poem does. But if you read them all in order, so it works like a regular novel. It's a book about a brother. It's a book about a boy who has a twin brother and his great feats at basketball, but it's also about the family. And it's an amazing book. I think you'd really enjoy Crossover. Then one of my favorite books of all time, which I've been saving to show you, it's actually called The White Mountains. It's the first in a trilogy it's called the Tripod Trilogy, but the first book in the series is The White Mountains, and it's by John Christopher. I read this book when I was 12. I think anybody 11 and older would love it. It is an adventure story set in England, but in a futuristic land where aliens have taken over the world. And the boy has to save the world, of course. It's a book where the aliens have taken over people's minds. And besides being a great adventure, it really makes you think about what freedom is and what being human is. So I recommend not just reading The White Mountains, but reading the entire trilogy. It's well worth it. And this book has stuck with me ever since I was 12. I still think about this book all the time. And then I have the Penderwicks. I don't know if you know this series. This is the first in the series. I love the first 3 books of this series. And it's about 4 sisters on summer vacation. It also has a boy character named Jeffrey, who is their friend, and a dog who throws up a lot. It's got no magic in it. It's a realistic story, but it's very charming, funny, and both boys and girls will laugh out loud with the adventures of the Penderwicks. So if you need a book, order from your local bookstore. I'm going to recommend my two local bookstores today, which are Brilliant Books and Horizon Books in Traverse City, Michigan. So if you need a book, contact those, because I can even have a signed book for you at those bookstores, because I live right around the corner. Now, thank you to everybody who entered the book giveaways. We're going to draw the names out of a hat later on today. So I will let the winners know if you won a book. And if you didn't win a book, you can go to Brilliant Books or Horizon or your local favorite bookstore to get them, because those are all titles that are available. Now, I wanted to let you know that our last episode of Fiction Friday will be next week. Now, some kids are already out of school and some kids are still in school a little bit in June. But wherever you are, I hope you've enjoyed these episodes and that the tips I've given you have helped you enjoy your own writing and got ideas for some new books. There's still a chance to have a show dedicated to you, so you can write to me at heathershoemaker.com. And Luke, Mariah, and Caleb, I hope that you enjoyed your special episode of Fiction Friday. Have a great week, and I hope you have good luck with the book contest. See you next time.